Hey, it's Ale again, and welcome back to Cottage Treasures Quilting. This is episode 2 of free motion quilting on your home sewing machine. So last episode we talked about flowers, leaves, paisleys, serpentine lines, bubbles and stones. Now on this episode we're going to talk about stippling and meandering, feathers, Paisley feathers, echoing everything as you go, because it always gives it a great pop, and I always advise echoing everything. We're going to talk about combining some of the patterns we already did before. So we're going to learn the feather, and then we're going to combine the paisleys with the feather. We learned about the flower and the leaves and the swirls. We're going to start to combine those together. We also are going to be doing a draw, and this is going to be for comments on this video as well as new subscribers, and we will be giving away 2 of our free motion pattern booklets that we've made that go through our patterns we've created for some quilts we did, which are the ivory, dream big, and opal and ivory, and they are 4-stage how you go about drawing it in the first place. There's 5 patterns for the opal and there's 6 in the ivory, and so comments and subscriptions, we will go through them after the video's aired for maybe a week, and then we will choose who is going to be the winners. So we're going to start the same way. I'm going to draw these new patterns first, and then we are going to bring it over and practice it on our practice sandwiches. Alright, so first off we're going to talk about stippling or meandering. Majority of the time when I do this, I'm using this to fill in spaces, whether it's inside of a free motion pattern or outside of a free motion pattern. This is what I use to fill the space. So again, pencil and paper, and I'm going to start on one edge, pretending that it's the edge of wherever I'm starting on my quilt, and I am going to try not to remove my pencil at all. So it's a game of squiggly lines and randomness. And you're just going to fill in as much spots as you can, and trying to be absolutely as random as possible, but trying to keep that, it's about 1/8 of an inch of gap between the lines you've already drawn. And you can see they're completely random, but the consistency of keeping them about the same gap from each other adds the effect you're looking for. So this is nice if you're doing a quilt with shapes, geometric shapes, or even you've done a big free motion pattern, or you're not quite sure what to fill into the area. This is always a nice opportunity to practice stippling or meandering. So last episode we talked about flowers and we talked about leaves and swirls, so let's go ahead and combine those together. So again, we start with that crest moon, right? And then our petals. And then our echo over top of our petals. And then fresh new set of petals. We'll echo over. And let's say right here, before finishing this echo, let's throw a leaf in. And then we can come out by just echoing over top of that leaf again and continuing our petals. And then we'll echo back over, and I'll start another flower right here with the crest moon and start the petals. Echo over those petals. Now this little spot in here is empty, so I can easily just echo in there just to fill in that space. And I can even start another flower right here. Echo over top. New set. Now I'm going to throw a swirl in. So we learnt our swirls yesterday. Just throw a little swirl in there. Come back and continue the echoes I was doing on this flower. Now we'll throw another leaf in. Continue the echo. Maybe throw a petal or two in here. Echo out. And we can echo all the way down around our swirl and start another crest moon. Start another flower. And then I'm going to throw another swirl in right here. Continue my echo. Throw a leaf in. And then maybe start another flower up here. Crest moon. Petals. Echo over the petals. Start another set of petals. There you have. That full block is now filled in with flowers, swirls, and leaves. So you can see on this quilt, I also did the flower technique with swirls. There's a leaf, and I built flowers throughout the whole border of this quilt. Let's start with just a basic feather, just a straight feather. So what I usually do is I'll draw a line here just to pretend that it's the edge of my quilt. I will start from the bottom. I'll go straight up, and I will make a little feather bump on the top, and I will work my way back down just like a balloon on a string. There are a couple ways of going about doing this. You can do both sides at the same time, or you can do one side at a time. I normally do one side at a time because I like to travel up and down this stem a couple times when I'm quilting, just because it helps really stand out. So you start off with your bump, and it's like half of a heart. Come up, traveling that same line you've already done, and jump out again. And you want to run into your previous feather. And then what I do is I travel back along this bump I've already done, and I want to stop about the same spot I had hit here and come out and back in. And you want to travel into your stem going inward. So we've reached here, then we'll come up a little bit, and I keep the gaps around here about the same. I'll come up again, and I'll come out again. Bump back into that one. Travel along that line again, bump back out, come back down. And you just follow this process until you slowly get to the top, And I do tend to make my feathers smaller as I get to the top, and once I've reached this top one, I'll just follow along that line and just throw a little one in there. Then I will travel back down my stem to start the other side. So again, jump out, about a half heart shape, travel up that stem, and then you'll have a reference guide, if you do one side at a time, of where you want to jump out again on the other side to keep them looking somewhat consistent. Jump out, travel back along that bump, jump back to the stem, going down into the stem. Up, come back out again, bump into it, travel back, come out and around, back down into the stem. Out of the stem, bump into it, back up that line, draw the next one. And I would echo this whole feather. Echoing, I find, is the key to all free motion. I can't say it enough. Echoing just, it pops everything, it just borders everything, it frames it to say, wow, look at this pattern over here. So let's start another one, and we'll do a curved one this time. Same thing, I'll make the balloon at the top, travel back down, start on one side with a half heart shape, travel up the stem, and then start continuing the pattern. Practice is the key. You know, I want you to draw 10, 15, 20 feathers before you actually start to feel like, oh wow, those are starting to look pretty good. So that's the one side. I'll travel back down, or if you don't want to travel back down, you can jump out right here and echo, since you've already finished this side. You can echo it, and then you're back at the bottom to start your next side. So we'll do the same thing. Travel on that line, jump back, go down and towards the stem. Come up a little bit, start your next feather, and continue the process. So we'll do another feather. One more just to show the process. And I'm going to do a curving one. Balloon, head back down that stem. Again, half a heart shape, and then start the process. Now with these curved ones, I really like it, is as soon as you start to get onto the inside in here, we're going to close them, make them a little bit smaller. So we'll continue. So then we can echo, get ourselves back down to the bottom of the stem, and start the next side. And there you have 3 different styles of feathers, very much the same, straight, a little bit of a curve, and this one curling right in on itself. Here's an example of some feathers. You can see they get quite big around the edges, but that's because I'm trying to fill in this whole space with one feather. So here's another one down here. You can see it starts out small because I'm filling in that area, then they get quite big, and then back to small again to fill in that area. And then you can see I've echoed to fill in a little bit extra space. So now let's talk about paisley feathers. This is going to be the last pattern that we talk about in this episode. So the same as the last feather we did with a stem, starting with a stem. Now I usually do these in a bit of a question mark shape. So I do the same thing as we built our first flower, or our first feather. I'll build off of it with a stem, and I usually make a question mark symbol. Now instead of doubling off of that same line I just did, I'm going to echo it about a 1/4 inch distance away from it and make my way back down to the bottom, right to the bottom. Now I'll do this 2 more times. Another 1/4 inch seam of echo to the point, and then one last one to make it back down to the bottom. Now we're back at the bottom, so our stem is made. Now we'll start with the paisleys. So I travel up the one side of my stem and I draw a little tiny teardrop or a little feather, and then I echo it 2 to 3 times. Then I travel up a bit and I start my next teardrop. Echo over it 2 or 3 times. Travel up a little bit, next teardrop. Echo over it 2, 3 times. Travel up, next teardrop. And we just repeat this same process until we've made it all the way around. And then I will follow the stem I've already done all the way back down to the beginning again. And now we'll start the inside. And then I would recommend echoing all the way around the whole feather, just to give it that nice crisp border to finish it off. And then once you've reached the bottom, start up the other side just to finish off the echoing. And there you have a paisley feather. So an example of a paisley feather I did to fill this leaf right here, as well as up here. You can see they're not perfect. I hadn't come into my rhythm yet with drawing the paisley feathers, but that comes with time, right? Here's another one over here, just to fill in that leaf. And there is our paisley feather. Okay, so let's move into our flower swirls and leaves. So again, these are quite random of where you want to go. You can draw these with a fabric pen. The only problem is that with all the curves and the echoes and the petals with the leaves and the swirls, you'll kind of get lost. So I recommend mapping out your first pattern, your first flower with a leaf, 2 leaves, and a swirl, and then going free motion from there on your practice sandwich to try and fill in the spaces. So I'm going to try and fill in a whole square here. I'm going to draw from the corner here, I'm going to draw my first crest moon with my petals, with my echoes over my petals, with my next petals, followed by a swirl over here, my echo over those petals, a leaf, with an echo, and then I'm going to leave it right there to then figure out where I'm going to go from there, whether I'm going to start another flower, am I going to echo to over here to start a flower. From there on, that's when the imagination kicks in and you start to learn how to fill in those spaces. So first crest moon, then the petals, echo over the petals. So there's the beginning of our flower. I'll do our next set of petals. The first swirl. Back into the echoes on these petals. Now I'm going to throw a leaf in. Over the last echo. And that's what we've drawn. So now from here, I'm going to echo back over. I'm going to start another flower over here and try and evenly work back and forth to fill this whole space. Flowers, leaves, and swirls filled in that whole block. So we've done a lot of contrast black on the white. So for the meandering at the end here, I'm going to do white on white just so you can see how nice it blends into the quilt. So I quickly quilted this feather here, and now I didn't quilt my feather big enough to fill in the rest of the space, so I'm going to stipple or meander my way through this the open space here. So I'm just going to start from one end, work my way around the feather to the other end. And again, this is very random. Just keep those gap distances between your stitches the same. And there we go. So we have the white on white, looks very nice, it blends in quite nice. And then we have the meandering or stippling to fill in the extra space. So that concludes episode 2 of free motion quilting on your home sewing machine. Remember that we're going to draw a special commenter or subscriber to win some free motion patterns that we've made. Please like and subscribe down below for future episodes. And this is Alay from Cottage Treasures Quilting, and we'll see you at episode 3.